For the first time in human history, scientists have recorded what your brain does at the exact moment you die. Not a guess, not a theory, an actual recording from real electrodes of a human brain crossing the line from alive to dead. And what it did in those final seconds is something almost nobody was prepared for. Because your brain doesn't just switch off like a light, the recording suggests that in the moment you die, your brain might do the opposite. It lights up, it surges. And it may spend your final 30 seconds doing something so strange and so specific that it could explain one of the oldest reports in human history. The thing people who come back from the edge of death describe again and again. Your whole life flashing before your eyes. Stay with me, because we're going to walk right up to the line, second by second, and I'll show you exactly what the science has actually found happens inside your head when everything ends. For centuries, this was impossible to study, for one obvious reason. You cannot schedule a death inside a brain scanner. It happens when it happens, almost always nowhere near the equipment you'd need to capture it. Then, in 2016, it happened by accident. An 87-year-old man was in the hospital being monitored for seizures, his brain wired up to a continuous EEG, a machine reading his brainwaves in real time. And during that monitoring, he suddenly had a heart attack and he died. Which meant that, for the very first time, scientists were left holding a recording of a human brain in the actual act of dying, moment by moment. A neurosurgeon named Dr. Ajmal Zemmar led the team that later studied it. And when they examined the 30 seconds before and after the heart stopped, they did not find a brain fading quietly into silence. They found something else entirely. To understand why what they saw stunned them, you need to know about one specific kind of brainwave and what it normally means. Your brain runs on electrical rhythms, and they come at different frequencies. The fastest, highest energy of them are called gamma waves, and gamma waves are not the waves of a resting or fading mind. They are the exact opposite. Gamma activity is what your brain produces during peak concentration, during vivid dreaming, during deep memory recall, the moments when your mind is at its most intensely, richly conscious. Now here is what the recording showed. As the man's heart stopped and blood stopped reaching his brain did not flatline into nothing. Instead, it burst into a surge of gamma waves, the signature of an intensely active, conscious mind, firing hard in the seconds around death. And this was not a one-off fluke. Years earlier, a researcher named Jimo Borjigin at the University of Michigan had seen the same impossible thing in the lab. When she studied the brains of dying rats, she expected the activity to simply drop towards zero. Instead, in the moments right after the heart stopped, their brains lit up with a surge of these same high-frequency waves, more organized and in some ways more intense than ordinary waking life. The dying brain wasn't shutting down. For a moment, it was ramping up. And it didn't stop with rats. In 2023, Borjigin's team studied several dying human patients as they were taken off life support, watching their brain activity in real time as the body failed. In two of them, right at the end, the same thing happened. A sudden surge of gamma activity concentrated in a region tied to conscious awareness. Two separate labs, two different species. The same eerie pattern, the brain flaring up, not down, at the very edge of death. But a surge of activity is only half the story. The real shock is where in the brain it was happening, because that location points straight at what the dying brain might actually be doing. When Zemmar's team looked at which regions were firing during that gamma surge, they found it concentrated in the parts of the brain responsible for memory retrieval. The exact networks your brain uses when you pull up a vivid memory and relive it. Sit with what that implies. In the final seconds, the dying brain may be doing precisely what people who have nearly died have described for as long as we've kept records. A flood of memory, your life replaying. The researchers themselves raised the possibility, carefully, the way scientists do, that the brain may be staging one last recall of significant life events in the moments before the end. The very thing dismissed for centuries as a myth, your life flashing before your eyes, suddenly had a fingerprint sitting right there in the data. Not proof, but a haunting, physical clue. And this connects to something even bigger, the strange, consistent things reported by people whose hearts stopped and who came back. People from completely different cultures, ages, and beliefs, who were clinically dead and then revived, describe an eerily similar set of things. A tunnel, a bright light, a feeling of profound peace. the sensation of floating above their own body, looking down at it. The pattern is so consistent that back in 1975, a researcher named Raymond Moody gave it a name that has stuck ever since: the near-death experience. For a long time, these were waved away as pure fantasy. But neuroscience has slowly started to find the machinery behind each one. The tunnel and the light may come from the visual system, starved of oxygen, activity collapsing inward from the edges toward the center. The overwhelming piece may be a flood of the brain's own pain-killing chemicals, as the whole system is pushed to its limit. The out-of-body feeling has been traced to a specific spot where the brain stitches together your sense of where you are located, a region that, when it misfires, can place your viewpoint outside your own body. And then there's the work of Dr. Sam Parnaya, who has spent years studying people during cardiac arrest. To test whether patients were genuinely perceiving their surroundings, his team even placed hidden images on high shelves in resuscitation rooms, images visible only from up near the ceiling, to check whether anyone who reported floating above their body could actually describe them. And in his research, some patients did report clear, structured awareness, and in certain cases, could accurately describe things that happened around them during the window when their hearts had stopped and, by every clinical definition, they should not have been conscious at all. It is deeply contested, but it forces an uncomfortable question about how neatly the lights actually go out. Which brings us to the strangest, most unsettling part of all: the timing. We tend to picture death as a single instant, one moment on, the next moment off. But biologically, that isn't how it works. When your heart stops, your brain cells do not die immediately. They have a small window, running on their last reserves, before the damage becomes permanent. In fact, we've learned that death is far less of a bright line than anyone assumed. In 2019, scientists at Yale took the brains of pigs that had been dead for hours, killed at a slaughterhouse, and by pumping them with a specially designed fluid, restored some of their cellular activity, not consciousness, but living, functioning cells, switched back on inside an organ that had been dead for half a day. Death, it turns out, is not a single switch that flips off. It's a process, a slope the body slides down, and for a window of time, parts of it can still be pulled back. That means there may be a stretch of seconds, maybe longer, after the heart has stopped, where the brain is still capable of activity, still running that surge. Which raises a question researchers genuinely wrestle with, and I'll just say it plainly: for a brief moment, some flicker of the mind may still be there, after the body has already stopped. Not long, but perhaps long enough for that final flood of memory and light to play out from the inside. So, what happens in your brain when you die? Based on what we've actually recorded, the honest answer is nothing like the quiet fade we always imagined. The machine does not go gently. In its final act, the dying brain may surge with the most intense activity of conscious life, reach down into your deepest memory, and pull your entire existence back up one last time, wrapped in a strange and overwhelming calm. We don't have all of it yet. This is a young science, built on rare recordings and careful researchers who are the first to admit how much we still don't understand. But the picture beginning to form is extraordinary. It suggests that the very last thing your brain may ever do is remind you, in a rush of light and memory, exactly what it felt like to be alive. And maybe that's why the people who have been to the edge and come back so often return changed in one specific way. They stop being afraid of it. Whatever they saw in those final seconds, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the most awake they had ever been. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like this, click subscribe. Your brain didn't want you to know, but now you do.